Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be doing our updated early 2022 NHL mock draft. Now, we did a 2021 mock draft and then we did the mock draft and the simulation a couple weeks back, and a lot of you guys were asking me to do 2022 and I realized I hadn't done a 2022 mock draft since March of last year. So I think it's about time we do an updated ranking of the top 15 prospects in the 2022 draft because there is some major changes. So, who are, right now, the best prospects in the 2022 NHL Draft, and which prospects make my top 15 prospect rankings? Watch till the end for all of the prospect rankings and all of the picks, and hit that subscribe button if you are new. 70% of the people that are watching these videos are not subscribed, so every bit helps, and hit that subscribe button for more hockey and prospect content just like this. Now, as I said before, I haven't done a prospect ranking since March of last year, and there is a lot of new ground to cover, so we're going to quickly get into this top 15 and start out with the 15 best prospects of the 2022 NHL Draft. I have, from Minnesota, Maddix Fleming. Now, Maddix Fleming was one of my highly ranked prospects back in last year's mock drafts, last prospect rankings, and he was a guy that last year had a bunch of potential, but this year, I would be lying if I said that he wasn't a little bit disappointing. Now, the 5'11" forward, so far in the U17 level for the USDP, has played 19 games, getting 2 goals, 14 assists for 16 points. And those aren't the worst point totals in the world, but compared to what other players are doing in the same draft, it is a little bit disappointing. I mean, compared to a guy like Isaac Howard, who has like, I think 38 points in like 26 games or something in the U17 level, and other guys like Jack DeVine or the other Jack Hughes that are doing better at the U18 level, I think it kind of brought down Maddix Fleming quite a bit for me. Going on to number 14 though, this is a defenseman that I've been able to watch a lot more these past couple of seasons. He was always on my radar, but so far has had a pretty great start to the season, that being from the Finnish U20 league, Thomas Hamara. Now, Tomas is a 16-year-old Czech-born defenseman who doesn't turn 17 until this March, and I think has a pretty great pedigree to what we can see in a top 15 pick. Now, with Hamara, he's played really well in the U20 Liga so far. As a 16-year-old in a U20 league, in 32 games played, has gotten 3 goals, 15 assists for 18 points. And from what I have seen of him in the U20, he definitely looks like he does belong, which again, for a 16-year-old is very impressive. He was supposed to play in the U18 Liga, and that's where he was last year. He got 32 points in 46 games as a 15-year-old then, and always had the pedigree and always had the potential of being a top 15 pick for me, but this year is, I think, where he is really proving it. He could potentially be in the Liga next season, and I think could have the potential to get as high as that. But now we're going to move on to the 13th best prospect in 2022, and if you haven't noticed already, it's looking pretty great for Team USA, and at number 13, I have Jack DeVine. Now, Jack DeVine is one of the older prospects in this draft of an October birthday. He is 17 years old already, coming from Illinois, but the 5'11" forward has done very well this season, has played in the U18 USA team, and has done pretty well for himself. In 14 games, has 7 goals, 7 assists for 14 points, and in the USHL in 3 games, has gotten 3 assists for 3 points as well. And even though he is on the older side still when it comes to age, I think those stats are pretty impressive. He's coming to the U18 team and hasn't played the most games by any means, but has still been a very productive, very reliable player for that team overall. And on offense, I think has a lot to offer. He's a solid overall quick skater who does have a lot of offensive potential, I think, but he's really consistent and really mature, I think, in all 3 zones. He's a guy, though, that in terms of high-end potential, I'm not sure if I see that, especially when it comes to the USA prospects in the whole class, but I think he could definitely become a good middle 6 player in the future in the NHL and a reliable offensive guy that just under the radar gets the job done, and that's what Jack DeVine does. Now, I talk about how Team USA has a pretty solid group going in 2022. Well, for the Czech Republic and their defensive prospects, 2022 looks very, very solid. Coming in at the 12th best prospect and the 12th spot in my rankings, I have a defenseman from the Czech Republic, David Juraj. Now, David Juraj is one of the more interesting prospects, I would say, in this draft. He is on the older side as a November birthday, as a 17-year-old, but he's a 6'3", 176-pound defenseman that is playing in the Czech Republic, just like 2021 draft prospect Stanislav Svozil. But when I watch Juraj compared to Svozil, I think Juraj has been more mature, more consistent, and better prepared for the top Czech League than Svozil has been. In the Czech League, in the top tier 1 as a defenseman, in 24 games, has 2 goals, 5 assists for 7 points. I've been able to watch a little bit of him as well, and just the maturity level already that he has, the poise that he has. He uses his athleticism and his body super perfectly, especially in the defensive zone, I think. And in terms of his shot, in terms of his offensive makeup, I think there is definite potential there too. But we're now going to move on to number 11, one of the better Swedish prospects, I would say, in this draft. 2021 looks a lot better for them, but 2022 still has some good options, and I think forward-wise, at least, it's led by Ludwig Persson. Now, Persson is one of the more, I would say, refined prospects already in this draft. He's an October birthday, one of the older ones from Gothenburg, Sweden, and as a 5'11 winger, I think he does have potential. And the U2, actually, he's been playing quite well in the SHL from what I have seen. He played 13 games so far this year, 1 goal, 1 assist for 2 points, and has looked very, very solid. He also played a lot in the Junior 20 League as well. In 17 games, 5 goals, 9 assists for 14 points. I think he does look good there as well, too. I think a lot of what is, I guess, keeping him down is just the age on him. I would kind of expect a little bit more, I guess, from what I've seen, but if he does have a full-time spot in the SHL next year, I could see him maybe not as good of a William Eklund type of year, but having a consistent role in the SHL, which I think is definitely huge for a guy his age. Now, we're going to get ourselves inside the top 10. I'm going to go to a guy that has been super impressive this year, and whenever I watch the USDP U17, see, not just in points, but in terms of standout play, is one of the best players on the ice every single game, and it's been that way throughout this whole season. We're going to go now to number 10 and Isaac Howard. Now, Isaac Howard is quickly becoming one of my favorite prospects in this draft. He's a little bit undersized at 5'9", but he's 16 years old and doesn't turn 17 until this March, so he's one of the younger prospects in this top 15, but he's a guy that, coming from Wisconsin, has been electric so far in the U17 level. In 26 games played, has 19 goals, 19 assists for 38 points. Played 1 game in the U18, got 0 points in 1 game played, but I wouldn't really look at that too much. When it comes to Isaac Howard, he is a guy that with the U17s is the best player on that team right now, it seemed like, and was just insane throughout the season. Now, with Howard, I think there will be some patience that will be had there, but I think in terms of the overall offensive makeup, he just has a lot of offensive tools to his game. But now going on to number 9, and outside of this, things continue to get really, really solid, and we're going to go to another great Swedish player who has been really rising over this last year or so. And this is a player also that I really don't see getting too much credit around the league for the 2022 draft, but he has been exceptional, and right now, I think he's looking like one of the best defensemen in the 2022 draft as well. Going to Swedish defenseman and Elias Salamonson. Now, Salomonsson is also one of the best names of this draft, but it is just incredible with what he's done so far. He's one of the youngest prospects in this draft from an August birthday, won't turn 17 until this August, so he has got a lot of time on his hands, but he's 6 foot already, 172 pounds, and has been making some beautiful progress this past year or so. In the Junior 20 as a 16-year-old defenseman, in 14 games has 4 goals, 11 assists for 15 points, and has played 3 SHL games as a 16-year-old D-man. He has 0 points, didn't get much of a role, but still, to play that amount of games as a 16-year-old D-man who doesn't turn 17 until August, that speaks a lot to what Elias can do. Now, I think the offense is mostly what I've seen from him in terms of what he could do at the NHL level. I think that's mostly what you will see from him, but he's a guy that in terms of size, in terms of skating, in terms of overall offensive tools, I think there is a lot there to unlock. But now going on to the 8th overall pick and the 8th best prospect in 2022, we're going to go to American forward in Jack Hughes. And no, you did not read that wrong. Jack Hughes from the USDP. Yes, we have another Jack Hughes on our radar, and he is, spoiler alert, very, very good. Now, it's not New Jersey Jack Hughes, once again, to make that clear. This is another Jack Hughes coming from the USDP. He's from Massachusetts, 17 years old, 6 foot, and so far in the U18 level has been pretty outstanding. In 30 games played, has gotten 7 goals, 24 assists for 31 points, and has not really backed down too much either in the USHL play, getting 7 points in 10 games played. But Jack Hughes, again, with all the sad parts about him, poor guy, he has to be compared to Jack Hughes now, but he is actually really good standalone by himself. He's a lot less of a totally reliant skill player. He has a lot more ruggedness to his game, I think, but he's a good overall skater, good overall playmaker too. But now we're going to go on to the number 7 spot, and one of my favorite prospects in this 2022 draft, one of the best Slovakian prospects I think we've ever seen, especially in terms of the forward side of things, coming in at number 7, Juraj Slafkovsky. Now, the 6'4" winger is just an absolute absolute madman out there. He's 16 years old, doesn't turn 17 until March 30th, but he's 6'4", 218 pounds, and I think in terms of the size and the skill combo, has so much to offer in the NHL. Now, in terms of his season play so far, he's played mostly in the junior or U20 SM Liga, and in 13 games, has 4 goals, 4 assists for 8 points, and again, as a 16-year-old, those are super impressive stats, especially for the opportunities that he's been given, which it hasn't been abundant by any means. He ended up playing 5 games as well for Team Slovakia in the World Juniors, got 0 points, but I thought looked very, very good in most of those games. Wasn't the best Slovakia prospect for the 2022 draft in that World Juniors, and we'll get into the other prospect in a second, but he was still pretty stupendous, and I think had a bunch of opportunities to score multiple goals in that tournament. But he is a pretty solid goal scorer, great overall offensive player, but he uses his size, I think, a lot better this past year than he has before. And if he's able to continue to use that physicality in a way that can really help him, I think you're kind of looking at a Capo Kakko style player. Now we're going to go on to number 6 here. We're going to go to a prospect that I did not have top 10 last time around, but I wanted to see him in season play do very well. He was great in the Youth Olympics and has transitioned that fully to the MHL, it seems like, and has been very good. That being Russian winger Ivan Miroshnichenko. Now I'm going to call him Ivan because I don't want to say that last name too many times, but he has been great so far in MHL play. 17-year-old, 6'1" left winger, and so far in 11 MHL games has 2 goals, 8 assists for 10 points. And in terms of U19 scoring in the MHL, I think is 4th with points per game, and has been looked very solid in my opinion too in the MHL. Now it is the MHL, and defenses are kind of suspect there, but I think Miroshnichenko has been just a great overall offensive force in terms of transition ability, skating, and overall puck moving. He's a great winger, and I think a guy that totally could be a top 6 guy in the NHL, but I think has potential to be a first line forward if everything goes right. But in terms of the skill, it's definitely one of the best Russian prospects in this kind of period, and a guy that I think will definitely lead Russia into the future in terms of high octane, high scoring Russian wingers. But now we're going to go inside the top 5. I'm going to start out number 5 with one of my favorite prospects in this draft. Go to the best Slovakian prospect in a very, very long time, in Slovakian defenseman Simona Meshkov. Now, Simona Meshkov is one of the most interesting and fun potential prospects in this draft. He is still a 16-year-old defenseman, doesn't turn 17 until, actually, well, in a couple weeks this time as I'm recording this, but as a 6'1" defenseman, I think he has so much to offer. Now, I want to point you to what he's done in the World Juniors and what he's done in Slovakia. In Slovakia, in the top-tier Slovakian league, in 24 games, has gotten 2 goals and 9 assists for 11 points. Now let's compare that to Brandt Clark, a guy that could go first overall in the 2021 NHL draft. Brandt Clark has 5 points in 13 games. Brandt Clark doesn't even have the points per game that Simona Meshkov has. And even though Simona Meshkov obviously has been with Slovakia that whole time, and Brandt Clark's adjusting this whole system, Simona Meshkov, as a 16-year-old, has had more points per game than Brandt Clark, who is supposed to be this great offensive defenseman, and he is. But Meshkov, I think, is great in both areas. In the World Juniors as well, got 4 assists, 4 points in 5 games played for Team Slovakia. He didn't really have much to work with, but he still was able to get some great production and look fantastic there. But we're going to go just outside the top 3 with the 4th best prospect in the 2022 draft, and end off with our last American in the rankings with Rutger McGrotty. Rutger McGrotty is just an exceptional overall offensive player. Still 16 years old, born in Lincoln, Nebraska. As a center at 6'1", I think has all the tools to be a potential first-line player in the NHL someday. Now, when we talk about his actual stats so far, he's been playing in the U17 and also the U18, but mostly playing in the U17, where in 26 games has 17 goals, 15 assists for 32 points, and was brought up to the U18 team as a 16-year-old and looked right at home in my opinion. Played 4 games, got 3 points, and I thought looked very exceptional. Now, when it comes to McGroarty, I think it's pretty much everything you want in an offensive player. He's great overall in faceoffs as a centerman, but in terms of puck moving, in terms of his shot, which has vastly improved this past year or so, he just has a lot more tools to his arsenal than he did before. But now with all the other prospects out of the way, we now need to get into the top 3, and this is where everything just gets so incredibly close. The top 3 prospects in this draft might be the best 1, 2, and 3 combo in draft history. I think it could be that good in terms of what you're seeing in the top 3. And we're now going to go to the 3rd overall pick, and this is a guy who I think would be 1st overall easily in the 2021 draft. Could be 1st overall in 2020. I think would be 1st overall in 2019. Maybe 1st overall in 2018. Definitely 1st overall in 2017. That being Canadian centerman Matthew Savoie. Now, Matthew Savoie, unfortunately, with the WHL, hasn't played played there yet, but he was sent to the USHL as a kind of a little bit of a loan, but still is going to play there this season. And in 6 games right now has 6 goals, 2 assists for 8 points. I've been able to watch at least 1 game of him in the USHL, and he has been absolutely electric. The offense is so incredible with Savoie, and it's so fun to watch. And as a potential first-line center, I think he could totally get there. He has a lot of the same makeup, I would say, as a Jack Hughes, but I think he'll be more NHL ready than Jack Hughes will be. But he's just a great overall centerman and a guy that in the future will be one of the best players, I think, in the National Hockey League. But now we're going to go on to number 2, the second best prospect in this draft, and it's so close, in my opinion, between number 2 and number 1. Both of these guys are dominating where they're playing, and for me at number 2, it's just barely him at number 2, but I still think he has potential to be the best prospect in this draft. Going to go for Finland's centerman, Brad Lambert. He, in my opinion, or at least for me at least, is my favorite prospect in this draft for a lot of different reasons. 17-year-old center who, at 6 foot, has been so good this season in Liga and in the World Juniors. In Liga play, hasn't done anything else than the Liga. He hasn't played a game in the U20, hasn't played a game in the U18. He has been a full Liga player this year. In 27 games, has gotten 6 goals, 5 assists for 11 points, and has been pretty great over these last few weeks, especially since the World Juniors. But in the World Juniors as well, he got 7 games played, 1 goal, 3 assists for 4 points. But honestly, I thought he looked better than the points do imply. He was one of Team Finland's best play drivers. The play driving is specifically what Brad Lambert was so exceptional at. Brad Lambert, I think, will pretty much bring it all, and as a second overall pick, I think will be one of the best second overall picks in NHL history. But sadly, with Finland's luck, there has to be one player ahead of him, and one player that I think is better. It's slightly better, but he will be one of the best players in the entire NHL. That being Canadian center, coming in at number 1, Shane Wright. Now, Shane Wright is in the I think the only prospect that's not played a game in this top 15 this season, but with what he did last year, I think there is still no denying that he is one of the best prospects in the world right now, and I think the best prospect in this 2022 draft. It just shows how good he was last year that there is still almost no debate on if he'll go first overall. In the OHL last year for Kingston, in 58 games as a rookie, got 39 goals, 27 assists for 66 points, and for a lot of the season was outpacing Connor McDavid's rookie season with how good he was. But Shane Wright, in terms of overall play, does pretty much everything perfectly offensively. He's one of the best prospects we've seen since McDavid, since Lafreniere, and honestly, I would say Shane Wright's better than Lafreniere in a lot of different areas. I think he is the best prospect since Connor McDavid. I think he'll prove that way in his first year in the NHL, but especially this year once the OHL gets going. He is the real deal and is the first overall pick and the best player in the 2022 NHL draft. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Make sure you comment down below what do you agree and disagree with my rankings, and who do you think are the best prospects in the 2022 draft. Share this video with your friends, get it out there, boys, and click on this card for all my 2022 draft content right on the playlist. My name is Nathan. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video or stream. Goodbye.